Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Mind's Eye. Thank you all for tuning in. First of all, I want to say if I'm not sure if the lighting in this video is going to be really all that spectacular here. I do a lot of these videos when I come to the laundromat and I'm waiting for my laundry to dry, so um, I didn't get to park in my usual spot, so the lighting's not really hitting my car too well right here. But I think this will work for what we're doing tonight. Um, so I was thinking today. About a topic that I want to talk about, and I'm not really sure how I want to get the ball rolling on this subject, but I'm going to I'm going to start off by giving a quote, and I'm going to kind of flaunt my nerdy Trekkie self right here. That quote that Captain Picard gives in Star Trek Generations, where he says that he believes that time is a companion who goes with us on a journey. And I feel that way about music a lot. I kind of feel like music is something that really goes with us throughout our lives, and it attaches itself to everything. I mean, it attaches itself to good memories and helps you to relive all the good memories. It also is something that can really attach itself to bad times and can get you through bad times, and you can become equally attached to music, kind of in both scenarios. And I was thinking today, because there's a band that I'm getting into that I've liked for a long time, but I just have recently started really diving into them, and I'm like obsessed with this band at this point, and I'm going to talk about them at the end of the video. But I was kind of thinking how um, the history of my favorite bands and what bands over the course of my life have been my favorite band, have held that, at least in my own mind, that coveted title of being my favorite band. And I think, as music fans, I'm pretty sure that those of you who are as big music fans as me will probably understand where I'm coming from here. But I'm going to go through just like a quick list of all the bands that I have considered my favorite over the years, because I think they really do kind of tell the tale a little bit. They would be sort of the soundtrack bands of my life, if you would want, if you want to use that analogy there. And then I'm going to transition into talking about the band that I've just been getting absolutely obsessed with. So the band that started it all for me is Kiss. I had a friend in 6th grade who was obsessed with Kiss. And actually, his obsession went before then. I remember him talking about Kiss in the 5th grade. But in the 6th grade, it was when he and I became really good friends and really started to pique my interest in this band. And at the time, I was 11 years old. I loved music, but I didn't really have access to a lot of music, as my parents are not necessarily music people. My mom doesn't like music at all, and my dad, though he does like music, he's more of a casual fan. He's not a record collector or a CD collector or a diehard fan or anything like that. He more or less just listens to he has a couple of he had a couple of tapes and whatnot in his truck back in the day. But he's more or less just a casual fan. It wasn't something he and I bonded over drag racing, first and foremost. So music wasn't a thing that we really shared right off the bat. And I was never a radio person. Radio has always been something that kind of frustrated me. So I just never really got into that. So I up till the age of 11, I was sort of limited into the kind of music that I was exposed to. But I loved music, whatever I could get my hands on. And when I was introduced to Kiss, and I asked my parents to get me a Kiss CD, and I wound up going to Walmart and getting this one right here, Destroyer, because this one had so many of the songs that I heard my buddy talking about. Um, it was just like love at first hear. I instantly knew that I kind of found the music that was mine and really spoke to me. And then Kiss, as it seems with so many people that are big Kiss fans that I find here on YouTube, Kiss is the ultimate gateway band. And even though I'm of a younger generation, from those who found Kiss in the 70s or found Kiss in the 80s, I discovered Kiss in 2001, but they hooked me for life. And they were my gateway band into rock music, and they were my first ever favorite band, so I'm always going to have that soft spot in my heart for Kiss. Um, Now, Kiss held the top spot for me for probably a good year and a half. And that same friend of mine who introduced me to Kiss, I was at his house for a weekend. he moved away after 6th grade, and so whenever he would come up, because I lived 15 minutes away from where his mom lived, so whenever he would come up to his mom's, we would get together and usually like hang out over the weekend or whatnot. So I was over at his place for a weekend, and he had this on cassette tape, Van Halen, the first album. And I remember listening to it, and for whatever reason, we only listened to the first side, but that was enough to draw me in. Running with the Devil, Eruption, You Really Got Me Now, and one of the songs that really kind of impressed me was I'm the One. Like, I was just sort of flabbergasted with that first half, and I had to go out and get this on CD for myself. So a couple months after that, I went to the mall, and my dad got me this, and that started my long obsession with Van Halen. But I remember traveling home from the mall that day, and my dad was telling me all about, Van Halen and the things that he knew about them, and I just started really getting interested in them, and then wound up a little bit later picking up 5150. Fair Warning was the third Van Halen album I got, and when I got Fair Warning, that was just the icing on the cake. That was the moment where Van Halen became my new favorite band, and I was absolutely obsessed with Van Halen for like the rest of that year, 2003 being that year. But Fair Warning is the one that did me in, and from there, just all the Roth albums were just perfect. All the Hair albums were really good and had a lot of good material. And I don't know, man. I just fell in love with the way that Eddie Van Halen played guitar. David Lee Roth and his unique personality, and what he brought to the band is just unmatched. Sammy Hagar sort of brought his own thing to that era as well. Yeah, Van Halen just they became it for me. Right after that, they were the band that was able to dethrone Kiss, and they held the top spot for me for probably about a year, I would say. And that's when I started kind of branching out and getting into other bands. At this point, I was only into like a handful of bands, but I had like thoroughly explored their discographies. So once I had finished exploring all those discographies and I had all those CDs, I was starting to like branch out into other rock bands. I remember watching VH1 one time, and they had a countdown of the top hair bands of all time, and I don't really remember what the list was, but I remember in second place was Twisted Sister, and I really kind of liked what I was seeing and hearing when Twisted Sister was being talked about. I thought We're Not Gonna Take It was super catchy, and it was being 13, going on 14 years old at that point. It just seemed to like strike a chord with me. So next time that I was able to get a CD, I asked my mom to get me this one right here, Stay Hungry from Twisted Sister. And again, it just was instant for me. This instantly drew me in. Stay Hungry, We're Not Gonna Take It, Burn in Hell, The Price, Don't Let Me Down. It's just this whole album started my obsession with Twisted Sister. And shortly after I got this album, and I loved this album when I got it, and I just started kind of going on the internet and finding out all I could about Twisted Sister. And back, this being 2004, this is before that you could get on YouTube and listen to anything you wanted. I mean, the best you could probably do is get onto certain sites, and they might have like little 30-second snippets of tracks and whatnot. And I was able to find like little snippets of Twisted Sister tracks, and I was just going through and listening to a bunch, and came across Bad Boys of Rock and Roll, and it was just one of those songs that just the instant that I heard it, I just got goosebumps, and the hair on my arm stood up, and I had to go out and find a CD that had that on it, like, as soon as possible. So the next Twisted Sister album that I got was Under the Blade and You Can't Stop Rock and Roll. I got those together, and I remember sitting next to my CD player in the kitchen, listening to those two CDs intently, and by the time I was halfway done with You Can't Stop Rock and Roll, I just remember thinking, this is it, man. Twisted Sister is my band. Like, they had leapfrogged Van Halen, and they had become my new favorite band, and they held that spot for probably a good year and a half. That seems to be a theme here. I think everybody seems to have that year and a half thing going, but that's going to change soon. Twisted Sister, unfortunately, has a very small discography. They only got 5 studio albums if you don't count Still Hungry or A Twisted Christmas. So I was able to explore that really quickly. And one of the bands that I had been into for a long time, I had already been into this band for years up to this point. They were one of the first bands I got into. But up to this point, they never had been my favorite band or really kind of held that top spot. But they were a band that was putting out new music. Out of all the bands that I had gotten into, they were the most active. And in late 2004, they put out a box set that blew my mind with just how much great material this band had laying around that was basically unused and was just sort of left off albums, put on B-sides, put on movie soundtracks, but really hardly saw the light of day. And there was just so much great material, and it really kind of brought me back to some of their older albums that I had at that point, and I really kind of rediscovered my love for them. Plus, they had announced they were putting out a new album that year, and this is the one, Have a Nice Day, from Bon Jovi. And Bon Jovi took over from Twisted Sister, just with all that great material that I was exploring at the time, and just sort of rediscovering my love for their back catalog, and getting to experience Have a Nice Day as a new release, like an actual new release, following along with all the news that came out about it. I remember ghosting the Dry County Jovi Talk message boards. I rarely ever posted on there, but I read them like every day, trying to see if anybody knew anything about the new album coming out, if anybody had found any snippets or clips, and I would watch them. And I just spent all summer just digesting that box set and anticipating Have a Nice Day to come out. And when Have a Nice Day eventually came out, I was not disappointed. I loved the album instantly. So much of this album just clicked with me immediately, just like it's the predecessors, Crush and Bounce, did. And Bon Jovi, they sort of rose to the top for me at that point in time. And they would hold that spot for probably a year or so. At this point in time, I'm 15 years old, going on 16 years old. I really was only into 70s and 80s music. When I first got into rock music, I kind of came in through a lot of 70s bands. I then started exploring and getting into mostly 80s bands. And I sort of adapted the bias against 90s music that a lot of 70s and 80s fans can have. Not everyone does, but I would say that it's pretty prominent. So I sort of adapted that bias, and considering the fact that I'm not like a huge Nirvana guy or anything like that, it was fairly easy for me to do. But I was introduced to the Foo Fighters, of all things, through a soundtrack on a Madden video game, and I got hooked on the song No Way Out. It was their new song at the time, and I really loved it. In fact, I remember going into the settings on that game, and there was the Foo Fighters song, and then there was a Faith No More song, and I basically turned everything else off so that those two songs would just play on repeat. And I just loved that Foo Fighters song so much, I wound up getting In Your Honor for Christmas that year. And I thought what stood out on In Your Honor to me really stood out. And there was some filler, sure, but it definitely got me interested in digging more into the Foo Fighters. And I went and then got Color and Shape. Loved it. Got this one right here, There's Nothing Left to Lose. And I loved it on the first listen. But it took probably a couple listens for this to become my favorite album of all time. And since I bought this album back in 2006, this album has not been beaten as my favorite album of all time. So this has not been disputed for what now, 17 years? How long ago was 2006? 17 years ago? That sounds about right. So for a long time, this one has been my favorite album. And Foo Fighters just, I don't know, there's something about them. I love sort of the juxtaposition of David Grohl's really aggressive singing style with the really laid back vibe that the Foo Fighters music gives off, especially with this album right here. This is a very laid back album, and I love it. I think it's just so relaxing. It's calm, but at the same time, it's kind of heavy too. And it's just a really kind of cool, unique way of approaching rock music, I think. And especially the way that the Foo Fighters approached rock music, and it feels like the drums really sort of drive the music more so than the guitars, which I myself had always been more of a guitar person, but over the years I've really become to appreciate good drumming more and more. And I certainly think the Foo Fighters have that, but their music just became so relatable to me, and it was different than anything I'd been into at that point, and they had just sort of rose to the top and become my new favorite band. And for about a good 2 years, Foo Fighters was at the top of the pack for me. That was until I discovered the Goo Goo Dolls. And one of the things I love about the Goo Goo Dolls is Johnny Resnick's songwriting. I think he is a fantastic lyricist. As I was mentioning, I was always most attracted to music where either the guitar work was super catchy or the lyrics were super relatable. And with Goo Goo Dolls, I found at this point in my life, I'm 17, almost 18 years old. I just found so much of Johnny Resnick's lyrics to be so relatable. It's almost like he could reach inside of me and pull the words that are inside my mind right out, the words that I can't articulate. And honestly, that can be said about a lot of bands that I love. But at the time, I mean, Johnny Resnick just felt like he could really speak for me in a way, and I just really fell in love with the music. I love Robbie Takak as well. I love the way their two styles work together to create all their albums. And this sort of mid 90s to 2000s era of the band is just, to me, there's really no better pop music out there. I love the Goo Goo Dolls to this day. Goo Goo Dolls had a good 4-year run at the top of the list for me. I mean, when I got into them, that was it for quite a while. In fact, and it wasn't until 2013 when both Goo Goo Dolls and Bon Jovi, two of my all-time favorite groups, put out brand new records that year. Bon Jovi put out What About Now. Most Bon Jovi fans will tell you that is one of their worst albums, if not their worst album. I really liked it. And I still like What About Now to this day. Goo Goo Dolls put out Magnetic, and it sort of just did not click with me at all. And to me personally, Magnetic started a string of pretty subpar to bad albums for the Goo Goo Dolls, whereas Bon Jovi remained pretty strong on their next issue, This House Is Not For Sale, and that kind of led Bon Jovi to overtake the Goo Goo Dolls once again. And since 2013, I've pretty much defaulted to Bon Jovi being my favorite band. Though there's many groups that are up there that I love, it just seems that Bon Jovi is the one that has always been toward the top of my list. I've not only been able to go back and discover their back catalog, but also half their catalog has come out since I've been a fan, and I've got to experience those albums as they came out. I'm attached to all those albums. Each one is like a pretty big soundtrack to that point in my life. So to this day, I would still say that Bon Jovi is my favorite band. That's my go-to answer, my default answer. And there's another, I have to give out an honorable mention to a band who is right in this group. They deserve to be in the running here, though I've never really considered them to be my favorite band. They've never had that moment where they were the surefire number one band. I don't know what I'm doing with my hands here, but they were the surefire like number one band, and that is Collective Soul. I discovered them in 2010, and Collective Soul has one of the most consistent discographies, in my opinion. To my ears, one of the most consistent discographies there are. I mean, there is not much Collective Soul output that I don't like. And again, so much of their music has just become part of me and has meant so much to me over the years that it's almost a shame. I almost can't believe that Collective Soul never had a year where they were the surefire number one, but they always kind of came in second to Bon Jovi or second to the Goo Goo Dolls, or they've been in my top 5 for like 13 years now, but they never really had their shot at the top. So I had to throw Collective Soul in there because they really deserve to be in that mix as well, though I've never considered them to be my favorite band, which is almost a shame because they totally deserve to be. And so many other great bands out there that I love that have never really been my favorite band. Metallica. Metallica's meant a lot to me over the years. Stone Temple Pilots. Aerosmith. Aerosmith was the second band I ever got into. I mean, and I think that 70s Aerosmith is about as perfect as rock and roll can get. That stretch of albums they released in the 70s is just, I would put that up against any stretch of albums any band has ever released. So 70s Aerosmith to me is just perfect. So I got to throw Aerosmith out there as well. Some bands I'm a little bit more recently into, like the Hooters. I've become a big Hooters fan over the year. Great underrated band. And I could go on. I mean, the list, I could go on, but I wanted to bring this, before this video gets too long here, I sort of want to come around and talk about the band that I've been getting obsessed with lately. And the reason why all this kind of comes to my mind now is because it's been since Collective Soul that I discovered a band and thought, this band could really belong in that top echelon of groups for me, to the point where they could actually become my favorite band at some point. I could see it happening. It's been 13 years since I've discovered a band and can say that. And in that span of time, I have discovered bands like Toad the Wet Sprocket, which I love, and they have defined a year for me. They've never been my favorite band, but they were probably the band that defined 2013 for me. I've discovered the Hooters, like I mentioned. I love the Hooters. Great underrated group. Bands like Blondie that I've really dove into and I love. Stone Temple Pilots. Discovering the true greatness of the Beatles and Led Zeppelin in that span of time since 2010. And all these groups, Shinedown, I mean, is one of the best bands out there right now, in my opinion. But none of these bands have really ever, and I love them all, and they have great music, great albums, great songs. But this is the first time that I actually feel like this band could potentially get up there into Van Halen and Bon Jovi territory, like that top echelon of my favorite bands and my favorite music. And the band that I'm talking about, and I'm going to pull out the first album that I ever owned from this band. I'm going to pull that out, and that would be this one right here, Rush, Moving Pictures. And I bought this album not too long, maybe a year ago. I want to say I got it at Goodwill. And I have always liked Rush for years. I don't even remember the first time I ever heard them. I know Tom Sawyer was the first song I ever heard, and I liked it the first time I heard it. And as I started getting exposed to more rock radio when I started entering the workforce, like back, the job that I listened to a lot of rock radio on, I started in 2011. And for years I heard the same songs getting played every day, but it was a lot of great classic rock songs. I mean, it may get monotonous when that's all you listen to, but you go to you go to another job and they're playing a pop radio station, you miss the same 10 Tom Petty songs every day and the same 10 Rush songs every day. You do. And I didn't really realize how good I had it, but I started getting exposed to a lot of stuff, including a lot of Rush, and I liked everything I heard. Tom Sawyer, Free Will, which I'd known before the radio, songs like Spirit of Radio, New World Man, Working Man, Fly By Night, one of my favorites, Closer to the Heart. I mean, just any Rush song that I heard, I liked. So for whatever reason, it took me until this point to really actually start diving into Rush and their deeper catalog. And it started actually a few weeks ago when I picked up this album right here, Roll the Bones. I liked Roll the Bones on the radio. It's been one of my favorite Rush songs for years. But I figured, you know what the heck? I saw it, and I thought, you know what, today's the day I'm going to take a chance on this album. I didn't really know what to expect, but I popped it in. I thought it was a solid album. Really solid album. And especially the first half. The first half really jumped out at me with like Dreamline and Bravado, Roll the Bones, of course, Face Up, Where's My Thing. The second half was still solid, and I really enjoyed this album. So that kind of got me into listening to more Rush. I made a big long playlist on my YouTube Music app with all the Rush albums and whatnot, and just started really diving in and exploring a lot of lot of great Rush material. And started listening to a lot of albums that I don't have, but I was able to go back to the record store and buy the guy out of the Rush he had, which he had this one here, 2012. Pick that one up. Great album right there. And then the rest of the ones he had are the ones that are generally considered to be weaker ones. Hold Your Fire, Counterparts, Presto, and Test for Echo. And I've been listening to these over the last couple days. These are supposed to be some of Rush's weakest albums right here. I mean, if that's true, sign me up, because these albums right here are phenomenal albums. My least favorite of the bunch is Hold Your Fire, and I still thoroughly enjoyed this one a lot. Time Stands Still is a great song. Probably not my favorite Rush hit, but I like it a lot. Force 10, I liked a lot. Prime Mover was really good. Lock and Key, Mission, Turn the Page. I think, and really, of all the Rush that I have explored over the past couple of weeks, Tai Shan may be the only song I didn't really care for. And it's not the worst song that I've ever heard by any stretch of the imagination. Counterparts I put in. I thought this one was really, really solid. Especially Stick It Out was really cool. Leave That Thing Alone was cool. I mean, solid record. Start to finish. Really loved that one. This one I expected to not really leave much of an impression on me. Presto. I see this one seems to fall at the bottom of most people's lists. I quite liked it. I mean, Show Don't Tell was a great song. The Pass I liked a lot. Warpaint, Presto, Superconductor. Yeah, I mean, I liked all the songs. I mean, I thought this was actually a pretty good album. And then this one today, I've been listening to, Test for Echo. And again, I am just beside myself with how good this album is. When I heard the first song, Test for Echo, I thought, yeah, it's okay. But the more I got into this album, like Driven's really good. Half the World I really like. And by the time you get to The Color Is Right, I'm like, this is just great stuff. Totem. Dog Ears I even kind of like. That one's kind of silly, but I kind of like it. Virtuality's really good. Carve Away the Stone's really good too. Oh, man. So if these are, in fact, Rush's worst albums, or their weaker albums, then you know what? I'm on board, because that is some fantastic stuff. And on top of that, the albums that I don't own yet from Rush, but I've listened to, like Fly By Night, great album. Farewell to Kings is phenomenal. Hemispheres is phenomenal. Moving Pictures I like a lot. I can't, that's one of the ones I can't wait to get the most, but the one I really need to get is Permanent Ways, because that one is like perfect. I've listened, I don't know how many times I've listened to that one over the past couple weeks on my phone, but I mean, Spirit of Radio and Free Will I already knew were great songs, but Jacob's Ladder, Entre Nous, which has become like my favorite Rush song probably. Natural Science, fantastic stuff, man. I'm like becoming a huge Rush fan. There's nothing about Rush that I don't like. I mean, they got pretty much everything that I look for and hope for in a band, and I'm kind of can't believe it took me to this point, 33 years old, to really discover and dive into Rush, considering that for the better part of the last decade and a half, I've at least known of them and liked their hits. But you know, at this point in time, I think maybe this is just the right time for me to get into this band. I don't know, they got everything I'm looking for, everything, you know, everyone knows how great Neil Peart is. Geddy Lee, fantastic. Alex Lifeson, great stuff, man. I doubt this will be the last Rush video that I'm ever going to post, but I just wanted to make a video to talk about how much I'm really starting to love this band. And the funny thing is, one of my best friends cannot stand Rush, and I like to tease him about that a lot, but he absolutely despises this band. It's like his least favorite rock band of all time. And but you know, that's how I feel about Queen personally. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me there, but I'm sure everybody's got that one popular, classic, well-respected rock band that they can't get into. And for me, it's Queen. For him, it's Rush. So Let me know in the comments below your thoughts on Rush. Let me know in the comments below. Give me your history of favorite bands as well. I would love to see that. So, I'm not really sure what I'm going to title this video, but I'll have to think of something. So, until next time, for some reason, I just forgot my entire sign-off deal. But check back for more rock videos like this in the future. Give me a thumbs up and like and subscribe, all that good stuff. Always look forward to hearing from you guys in the comments. So until next time, see you later. I don't know. I'm getting confused.